the blithe swan, the branching oak, the winding stream at its base, the drifting clouds, over all the coursing sun. Form ever follows function. And this is the law. Where function does not change, form does not change. The granite rocks, the ever-brooding hills, remain for ages. The lightning lives, comes into shape, and dies in a twinkling. It is the pervading law of all things organic and inorganic, of all things physical and metaphysical, of all things human and all things superhuman, of all true manifestations of the head, of the heart, of the soul, that the life is recognizable in its expression, that form ever follows function. So this is not an alchemical dictum, though it sounds like it could be, and sounds like it could be C.G. Jung, but it is actually written by Christiana's fellow Bostonian and another admirer of Melville, Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman. They are the words of Louis Sullivan, the early 20th century architect who has been called the father of the most modern of towers, the skyscraper, also mentor to Frank Lloyd Wright. Why do I bring in Frank Lloyd Wright and his mentor? As I walked through the spaces of Christiana's tower, when Ilana invited me to go up and be there with her and Hillary, I was intensely struck by the sense that the place evokes the same powerful impression of unity. Even unity doesn't feel right. Union that I experienced when visiting Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright's opus. And I also wanted to add that I called the Metropolitan Museum of Art home for 21 years. So I'm not an easy pushover when it comes to art. And I have the experience of every day walking into a building where all of the canons of art history were present. And so I became, I feel very sensitized to the sense of how different, the art of different cultures and different times contains the knowledge of the culture and of the time, the philosophy, and as Simone Weil says, it gives off its own glow. And so I was really very deeply touched and surprised while visiting the tower and getting that impression, even though it's fallen into disrepair and all of the accoutrements of the daily life of the faculty who lived there were present. I was really amazed at how, in spite of the chaos, this order that is intrinsic to the philosophy behind its creation held. So the center held. So I think it's also important when bringing up Frank Lloyd Wright and Sullivan to remember that Christiana's Tower is not just a Jungian transplant, but an intrinsically American expression of the encounter of Jungian thought and Jung with American transcendentalism. And the presentation that Michael gave on Melville, and people have mentioned it here and there, but I think it's very important to know that she has a place in art history. It's not just a sort of a Jungian one-off, but that being who she was, coming from where she came from as a Bostonian and being sort of suffused by American transcendentalism, that she would be attracted to Jung, but that the tower is really American in a very clear way. And it's funny because I was talking with Ami, and she was saying how the tower that she went to visit in Bollingen is very small, and I haven't been to Bollingen, but I do feel that maybe the American tower, just like many American things, is larger than the European. We do large very well over here. So I feel it's important to add her feminine voice into the art historical trajectory, and I can't help but mention the presence at this point in time of the exhibit of Hilma af Klint, who is also a feminine voice who just exploded in spite of the art historians onto the scene, and that her exhibit, I've heard from some insiders, is the most well-attended exhibit in the history of the Guggenheim Museum. And at the same time, the Guggenheim Museum was, in its inception, very influenced by Hilda Ribet, who was the assessor and the curator for Mr. Guggenheim, and very interested, again, in mysticism, and so there's a resonance there with a feminine vision and a way of containing it and developing it that I think is important. Both Hilma and Christiana were interested in the spiritual dimension and employed trance, and also you'll see if you visit the exhibit, and you have seen in the film that Hilary showed, that they both employ diagrammatic schema to sort of understand the world, and they also create these personal hieroglyphs that then are embedded in different parts of their work that have a personal meaning of union, of the opposites of masculine and feminine. And so I think it's important, again, to see that this is not just one person, but that there's a whole movement here that hopefully we'll be able to explore more, and that there may be other people who have wonderful work that is awaiting us. So Jung says that the tower is a confession of faith in stone, and that nothing which has not grown into its form organically over the decades, nothing to which I was not linked, appeared there. And I think, again, that's part of the experience of being in the tower, is also the idea in alchemy of the vision of the anthropocosm, of the relationship of man to the cosmos, and the micro, and the harmony of the golden mean, and the macro to the micro, is evident, because everything is in a harmonious relationship to everything else. And so I was talking with some people the other day about, is the tower just an imitation? And I think this is something that cannot be imitated. It needs to be lived and experienced. And I want to give you another quote from an archaeologist named Hélène Fleury, who wrote a book called Cosmos in Stone. "Sacred art is the science of forms. Forms express the coincidence between profane sciences and techniques and the religious sciences. That is, they link physics and metaphysics. These forms are determined by precise laws, which are the same for the building of a temple, the making of a vase, or the creation of tools. Sacred art uses symbolic language and mythical thought as a means of expression. So if we wish to understand its message, we have to reinforce our ordinary way of understanding with a more informed feeling and intuitive perception, whose light can resolve the dilemma of our habitual discursive duality." And then this comes back to what I was saying about the impression of art and what it gives off, or what it radiates, as Simone Weil would say. It certainly seems that the knowledge transmitted by the artists of the ancient world was that of the unity of all things. This knowledge could only be transmitted or assimilated by people for whom inner unity was an actual experience, or for whom this experience was the goal. So I think that every aspect of the tower, both within and without, in every little detail, is a reflection of this wholeness, rather than it could so easily be a hodgepodge. What leapt to mind was, I don't know if any of you have visited William Randolph Hearst's castle, but that just sort of jumped up in front of me. I thought, oh my God, yes. What a hodgepodge that is, even though it's a fabulous pieces, but it's a huge collage. And what's so important, and the reason I think it's so important to do something to save this tower, is because it is a unique work of art. And it's a unique work of art by a woman, even though other people participated, but it is a unified field, which is rare. And it gives off an impression. And that is, again, it's a treasure. And I think it's essential to save it. What we're going to do for this afternoon, or the orient that I want to bring in, is the word reverie. And of course, my background is in archaeology, and so the combination of archaeology and being a Jungian analyst is fateful for me always to go to an etymological dictionary. So it's like I can no longer go out to digs, but I can go dig. So of course I had to dig, and I was surprised to find that my fantasy of reverie was shattered immediately, because the first thing that I found was it says wild conduct and frolic. I thought, okay, raging, raving, revelry, and delirium. And then it sort of went into dream, wander, and rave. So I think I want to take the part of the dreaming and the sort of following what Jung called intuitive thinking, or his personality number 2, which is the part of himself that he felt could live and be manifested in the tower, and I think is also what the role of the tower held for Christiana Morgan as well. I also had to go visit the king of reverie that Sylvester introduced me to many years ago, Gaston Bachelard, who says, reverie gives us the world of a soul, and a poetic image bears witness to a soul, which is discovering its world, the world where it would like to live and where it deserves to live. It gives the I a non-I, which belongs to the I. So I guess what I'm saying is we're going to be a little more fluid in the afternoon, and I want you to allow the next part of the presentation to kind of permeate you. And it's a very, very special thing, I think, especially as an archaeologist. It's an object which I think is sort of in situ. It's a film called Kairos. It's 22 minutes long, and it was filmed and directed and edited by Jim Page, who I'm going to introduce you to because we're very lucky to have him here today. And the camera and lighting was done by Dave Lampert and Joel Shapiro. There's music by Joseph Zawinil, and there's music performed by Miles Davis, and also music by Jim Page. But what I want to invite you to do is really to see how the film's name, which is Kairos, and which is also it mentions the idea of the productions of time, and to allow yourself to be taken back to the time when the film was made. It was not long after Christiana Morgan died, and so it's an opportunity to be in the space the way she envisioned it, or as close to that as we can get. So it's really time traveling, and I think it's a unique opportunity to also not only be in the space, but to be in the intellectual space of Christiana and Henry Murray in a very interesting way, because we hear Henry Murray's voice, and we hear him speak about Christiana's life and his idea of what the arc of her life meant. And we also hear quotes by Nietzsche and by Walt Whitman, by Jung, things that Christiana herself wrote, Emily Dickinson. So that whole transcendentalist world and the world of Jung and the people that he drew upon as inspiration. And this is all woven into the film. So it's not the kind of film that we usually watch today, because it's very kind of evocative. But that's the form of reverie that we want to open the afternoon with, and then we're going to continue to move into a presentation on visions by Sylvester, and then we're going to focus on 2 images within the stained glass windows that Beth Darlington and Sanford Drobe will amplify for us. And then we're going to reorient ourselves again with the heavens and have a presentation of Christiana Morgan's astrological chart, just to come back and see how things resonate. And of course, we've seen with the technology that Mercury definitely is in retrograde. But we'll see what Eileen can amplify for us according to Christiana's chart. So we're really incredibly privileged to have Jim Page here, the Chancellor of the University of Maine, and he is going to tell you about the film.